What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, and I'm going to talk to you guys today about an EMP strike. What would you do if there was an EMP strike right now, wherever you are? So that's going to be SHTF Scenario number 3 in the scenario series. So what would you do right now if, as you're watching this video, all of a sudden your electricity goes out, whatever device you're using to watch this video goes dead, everything goes black in whatever building you're in? What would you do? Do you have a plan? You know, what would your course of action be? And you know, think about it for different places where you are. So what would you do if it happened while you were home? What would you do if it happened while you're at work? You know, what would you do if it happened while you're out, you know, in your nearby shopping center, or you're at the gym? You know, what would be your plan to get in contact with your loved ones? How would you communicate with them? You know, how would you gather information to figure out whether it's an EMP strike or not? You know, you guys got to keep in mind that if there's an EMP strike, you're not going to be able to drive most cars, because the the electronic computer in the vehicle is going to be fried, you know, from the electric circuit, from the electromagnetic pulse. It's going to fry the circuits in the computer. So, you know, you're pretty much going to have to go on foot. If you're away from home, you know, you're going to be on foot. You know, you're not going to be able to drive back. You know, do you carry maps wherever you go? You know, you should always have paper maps with you. You know, no matter where you are, you should always have paper maps. So this way, if something happens, you know, you can figure out, you know, where to go. Let's say you can't, you know, you may be far away from home and you may not be able to walk home in one day. You may have to figure out other places that are safe for you to shelter in. You know, you may have to figure out safe zones that you can go to spend the night or two on your way back home. So, you know, you want to think about, you know, how am I going to communicate with my loved ones, you know, if there's an EMP? You know, think about that for a minute. Do you guys have some way of communicating in an analog way that doesn't rely on cell phones or, you know, electronics? You know, is there any analog communications that you guys can use to stay in touch? You know, some things that you could do is you could, you know, if you're really serious about it, you could get a satellite phone. You know, although that's not even a guarantee, because the satellites could be wiped out by an EMP. Another thing would be a ham radio. You know, you can get a cheap ham radio for like 40 bucks. You can get a Bofang UV5R. It's a very basic ham radio. It's not waterproof, but it's a basic ham radio. You know, you can get one for everybody in your family, or anybody you want to communicate with. And you could use the ham radio frequencies to, you know, stay in contact. So that's another way, is ham radio, and then satellite, and then obviously any type of analogs, you know, analog communication that you could figure out. You know, but communication is going to be critical. So ask yourself, how would I, you know, communicate with loved ones? You know, what would I do? And then, you know, obviously you're going to want to gather intelligence. You're going to want to figure out the extent of the damage, you know. So if you're like at your job and all of a sudden everything goes black, you know, you're going to want to figure out, you know, the extent of the damage, you know. And EMPs could also cause a lot of electrical fires, you know, because there's going to be a lot of high voltage running through wires, and they're going to burn out. You know, the insulation is going to melt from the overcurrent. It's going to melt insulation, and it's going to arc, you know, through different you know, receptacles inside of buildings. It's going to arc, so that could cause you know, a lot of fires. So if you're in like a high-rise building, let's say you work in an office, you may want to think about, how would I escape the building if there was a fire because of an EMP, you know, or any kind of fire for that matter. But, you know, just remember that EMPs can cause fires. You know, it could burn down your whatever structure you're in, or nearby structures. They could catch fire. So that's something to keep in mind, you know. So think about what you would do for an EMP strike. How would you handle it? How would you communicate with people? You know, think about it, and think about what you would do based on where you are. If you're in, you know, away from home, or if you're home, you know, if you're out shopping, you know, how would you, you know, get home? How would you, you know, get in contact with people you care about, you know? So think about that, and you know, post, if you want, you can post some comments in, you know, in the comments section. Tell me what your strategy is. You know, you don't have to reveal too much detail so you don't, you know, compromise your operational security, but, you know, just I would like to hear what you guys are up to, and what your plans are. You know, another thing too is protection of electronics. You know, do you have a way to protect your critical electronic devices, like your cell phone, you know, things like that, your ham radio, your cell phone, any type of shortwave radios, satellite phones? You're going to want to protect those in either a Faraday cage, or you can go online and you could buy Faraday bags. They're basically just like Mylar bags, and they're like a heavy-duty Mylar, and basically that'll protect the electronics, you know. So that's basically it for this scenario. You know, what would you do if an EMP struck right now? Are you ready for that? How would you get home? What are your preps? Do you have enough food? Do you have a way to gather water? You know, do you have a way of purifying and disinfecting water? You know, think about those things, and I'll see you guys on the next scenario. Take care.